Yes, that's feeling good. Feeling good in the ear canals. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm doing really good. Do you know why?
Tell me.
Because we're back with another episode of the Throwin Bones MMA podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Adam Gerber, with my intrepid co-host,
Kyle Wheeler.
And we're here to break down Chris Weidman, again, winning the whole fight till he lost. Next week's UFC Singapore. Frank the Crank Camacho's our boy, and he's competing in that. We're probably going to chat a little bit about the big interview we just rocked with Jorgen De Castro, coming out in a later date. And what else are we going to talk about this week? Middleweights moving up to light heavyweight. We're going to talk about, do they stop female fights earlier? Does Aspen Ladd have anything to do with that concept? A bunch of stuff. We're going to be all over the place, all right?
Sounds good
So
to me.
let's just roll right into it. We're going to talk about the riot, Dominic Reyes KOing Chris Weidman in round 1. I called it. So if you want to know my thoughts on the fight, you just go to last week's episode. Kyle, what were your thoughts on the fight?
I was impressed by Dominic Reyes' performance. I was interested to see how it was going to go for Weidman. Like I've said, Weidman's one of my favorite fighters, kind of one of the guys that got me into this sport. Mm-hmm. So it was sad to see. But Dominic Reyes did say Volkan Ozdemir's takedowns did surprise him in the last fight. And obviously he was able to make those adjustments in this camp and really just, he had no problem after he got taken down. He got back up to the feet, and shortly after he got the finish.
So how impressed were you by that? Because that was your main sticking point last week with picking Chris Weidman. It was Dominic Reyes struggled with Volkan Ozdemir's wrestling, so Chris Weidman's probably going to manhandle him.
Yeah.
Which I agreed with.
Obviously, that was it. I was impressed, and it just showed that Dominic Reyes, he did the right things. He was close to losing that but he went back to the drawing board, and he came back, and he went back to his winning ways, getting that first round knockout over former world champion in Chris Weidman. What was your opinion on his performance? How did you like it?
My opinion on his performance is that his counter fighting is so slick. It's unreal the way he's able to glide out of range of his opponent and still land shots. His speed and his power is incredible. That was the Cannoneer knockout as well, was him sliding back while throwing an uppercut. So Dominic Reyes is incredibly impressive. Right now, for me, the question is, who's next for his opponent? Do you pit him against the winner of Anderson Walker, or do you just give him a title shot outright right now?
Honestly, I would give the guy a title shot. The names he has on his resume are impressive. He has wins over Jared Cannonier, Volkan Ozdemir.
Mm-hmm.
He's got Chris Weidman on that resume. He's also undefeated, and he's got the length, right? He's got a good reach, and he's a tall guy. So, that's an interesting matchup right there. We have seen in the past, guys similar height to John. They do give him a bit of problems. So it could be an interesting fight, right?
For me, it's like I want to see the Johnny Walkers and the Dominic Reyeses and the Alexander Rakic's against John Jones, no doubt. But for me, it's also like the longer I can wait for those guys to develop as talents, the more interested I'm going to be in seeing them fight John Jones. To me, I'm really not interested in the Floyd Mayweather tactic of picking off the prospects before they're fully developed and then crowning yourself the greatest of all time, which seems like John has outright said. That's his plan. That's his strategy.
Look at his division, though, bro. Look at his division. And also...
Yeah, that's true. But to me, who deserves the next title shot, right? Reyes or the winner of... I think Jan Blachowicz is due.
Well, that's the thing. That would be a good fight to make. That's the issue, right, with UFC. Labeling fights number one contender fight. They did label the Johnny Walker Corey Anderson fight. They did say a while back that it would be for the number one contender. So it kind of it puts this weird situation on for the fighters. Dominic Reyes, he's been looking good. Like you said, you have Jan Blachowicz coming off a big first round knockout as well. So it's one of those things where you don't really know, but the way the division's looking is it's kind of shallow at the point, right? Like it's got great
and yet deeper than it's been in years.
Yeah, it's got very great great competitors, amazing, awesome fighters in the division, but it doesn't seem like the people have the experience in the division, to face the kingpin John Jones.
So here's my reluctance. If Johnny Walker comes out with the W against Corey Anderson, do you want to see Dominic Reyes versus Johnny Walker right now? Because to me, I'm incredibly interested in that fight, but I'd rather see it in a couple years.
What do you mean? You'd rather see Dominic Reyes and Johnny Walker in a couple of years?
Yes. Well, to me, they're not fully realized prospects, right?
So
not yet.
They're saying they're not against each other?
Yes.
Interesting.
Because to me, that seems like that, from what I've read, is a very hot matchup right now that people want to see. People are kind of assuming that Johnny Walker's going to win that fight against Corey Anderson. I don't. If that is the outcome, I don't want to see them fight each other yet because they're both so unrefined as far as their potential, what they have with their athletic ability and their build, and what they've showed so far and how much they've grown in between fights. I think that right now what you would be doing is just killing off a prospect.
Well, in this game, you can't just sit there and go, like, you don't sit there and go, oh, well, you know what, like, I'm going to go fight 5 more times. It's like, no, you're going to go try and fight for the title. You're not, so the whole Dominic Reyes and Johnny Walker, I want to see that fight in a couple years. I don't care when I see that fight. I just want to see the best fight the best. So if that's the next fight to make it. But it leaves this situation with John, right? It's like all these guys could be fighting for what you could call a contender fight. And it's interesting. I'd love to see Dominic versus Johnny Walker. It'd be very interesting. But
I think so too.
It's also getting to the point where it's so hard to pick a contender in this division.
That you might have to do a prospect versus prospect.
Exactly, right? Because like in last week's episode, I believe we were talking about Chito Vera, right?
Yep.
And you were talking about how you're a bit worried that it could turn into a Jorge Masvidal type situation, right?
Or a Francisco Trinaldo,
where he has these fights and he hasn't quite got worked up. So it's interesting to hear you when we have guys at the top of the division, how you're saying you'd rather see them get a bit more time in the cage before they meet and fight each other.
Yeah, that's mostly just because of the potential that's so evident, and I think that it would be a better fight in a couple of years. Like when you said the best fight the best, I don't think they're at their best right now. I think they're going to reach not only their athletic, but their technical and mental peak in the sport within a couple of years, and I think like that has like potentially legendary fight potential,
Yeah, but you can't, like in this sport, you can't look in a couple of years. You can't look in a couple of years because right now we're in 2019. All of a sudden, 2021 rolls around the corner. Yeah, we're skipping 2020.
That's fine.
2021 comes around the corner, and Dominic Reyes can't make weight at 205 anymore.
Yeah, that's...
you never know what might happen. That is a long shot.
But at the same time, it is more of a tradition to keep the prospects away from each other until they're at the top and then pit them against each other. And it's more about, as someone's coming up, they're fighting somebody on the way down. Or someone who's been there for a while that's gotten that win, like Yair versus Stevens, right? What else did they do? When Josh Emmett, worked his way up the ladder. It wasn't fighting other upcoming prospects. It wasn't fighting Zabit. It wasn't fighting Yair Rodriguez. He was fighting the guys descending on the way down or guys who have been hanging around there for a while, the Jeremy Stevenses and the Ricardo Lamases of the world. And you just have so many of those guys at light heavyweight that have just been hanging around in the top.
His Michael Johnson thing, Michael Johnson, you could say he was on the way down, but the way Josh Emmett knocked him out, there's nothing to show other than how skilled of a fighter Josh Emmett really is.
But it's more of a critique of where these fighters are in their career, momentum-wise, when they're pitted against each other, and what kind of fight you get out of that.
See, I don't know because like at this point you have two.
Is there a craft to giving matchmaking fights and building a prospect, or do you just throw anything at them and hope that they withstand everything?
Well, obviously you got to matchmake the fights, but like we're talking about two guys that are at the top of the division. So when you're at the top of the division, it doesn't matter, and I'm sure in their mind they don't care.
No, definitely.
Like they don't care when they fight. So I just think, when you get to the top of the division, you got to be willing to, even if it's four slots high or 4 slots lower, you got to be, you got to be willing to take the risks. That's what the fight game is, right? Risks.
And if they need that experience for Jones against each other, it might be,
it would be good to have. It would be good to have. Because that's the thing is John Jones, right? He is so experienced, but he is beatable. So, right, like we've seen in his last fight that, you know, he hasn't looked like the same Jon Jones as we're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. So you never know right now what we're going to get with him. And, you know, just keep throwing the contenders at him. These guys he's fighting, you know, they have power. They're knockout artists. So it'll be interesting. Everybody gets caught eventually. And if Jon Jones can keep racking off those contenders, well, I guess he would be the Floyd of the UFC.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking about getting a title shot after this fight, Chris Weidman figured himself privy to a shot at Jon Jones if he made it past Dominic Reyes. This sort of falls in line with a theme we've seen recently. You know, Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos moved up in weight. They had fantastic success. They were two people who could hardly crack the top 15 of middleweight, and they shot straight to the top of light heavyweight. And, you know, Santos, more than Smith, gave Jones two fairly decent fights. I think it's the general feeling after that was that Weidman and Rockhold would be able to waltz their way to the top, and it would be no thing, and they would just join the light heavyweight elite out of sheer credentials from the past. What do you think that says for their careers right now, Weidman and Rockhold? What does that say for their careers, and what does it say for Jacare Souza, who's moving up to fight Jan Blachowicz in a couple of months, or in a couple of weeks?
I just think it's on a different it's different because, you know, Rockhold and Weidman, like, unfortunately they have been cracked in their careers, you know, they have been knocked out.
They had a war against each other.
You know, so they've had their moments in the spotlight, and, you know, like both guys, they didn't just move up in weight and just take on, you know, some tomato can, you know, higher, like, not ranked opponent. They hopped into the top of the division, and it just didn't work out for them, right?
Was that a mistake, do you think?
Was it a mistake?
Because the other aforementioned fight, and even Dustin Poirier has mentioned, pretty much every fighter I've seen an interview with on talks about when they move up in weight class. RDA, that's how RDA beat Kevin Lee. He banked on the fact that moving up in weight class and doing it at such a high level so soon, he wouldn't be able to adjust not only to, you know, the weight and how that would affect his cardio and affect his game plan, but also, you know, what techniques work on different size people. You know, when RDA moved up, his first fight was against not even Neil Magny, Tariq Safadine, right? That's completely different than, you know, Kevin Lee fighting up and fighting, or going up and fighting RDA in his first fights. And same thing said with Poirier. You know, it took him a while to adjust to that new weight class. Do you think they rushed it, assuming that it would just sort of be a cakewalk through a shallow division?
I don't believe that. No. I don't think that, because there's no way these guys are signing the contract to fight and they're going, you know what? This is one win. If I get past this guy, I'm at Jon Jones. Like, yeah, they can think about that, but there's no way they're not focusing on the guy that they're fighting. You know, like, you know, yeah, you can look, oh, I beat this one guy, I'm right in the picture, but then what happens? You get knocked out. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I believe that way of thinking, especially in the age of the sport we're in, it's kind of gone out the window because, you know, it's such a crazy sport. Anything can happen. Yeah.
Do you think that they not expected to do better, but in general, middleweight is seen as a stronger, deeper division than light heavyweight, right?
Well, yes, but okay.
Do you think that they thought it would be easier to work their way to the top of light heavyweight than it was to work their way to the top of middleweight?
Not at all, because
that's almost exactly what Rockhold said. Okay,
let me tell you one thing right now. Yeah, Luke Rockhold also is calling Jon Jones princess, and is So I don't know what those guys think, but they're also tweeting it, and they're not talking about it, you know, at a press conference. You know, Rockhold didn't have as much to say. I didn't see much media of him talking too much trash during his fight week. That's what I'm saying. So he has a lot to say before, and he also has a history of getting knocked out. So he might have that arrogant mindset. I don't think. I'm too biased, but yeah, I don't think Weidman would think that. You know, obviously Weidman, he was winning every fight before he lost. So actually, maybe he was just too confident because he was winning every fight before he lost.
Man, a lot of them were just in exchanges.
Yeah. So.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, it's so hard for me to accept the idea that when you're a championship level fighter in one division, I think you're gonna expect to be a championship level fighter in whatever division you go to.
Well, it's just like if you're a championship ringette player, you know what I mean? Like you have that kind of ego behind you. Like, yeah, I won that championship, so why don't I go play with this team and go for another championship, right? Like it's almost like another opportunity. You know, I've never been the world champ, so I don't know what that feels like. I'm sure that's a crazy feeling. And, you know, it seems so often that these guys, you know, they just can't leave it, you know, they just want more of, you know,
they think they can beat anybody.
Exactly, right? And that's the whole thing. But that is also the issue is, you know, in this sport, you have to think that way. You know, you can't be sitting here and being like, you know, I can't fight this guy because, you know, he's better than me at this. You know, you can't do that, or, you know, you're not going to be a fan favorite.
You know, there's a difference between thinking you're going to lose to someone and, you know, wanting to build yourself up in the division realistically, because if you don't think you're already a championship level fighter in that division because of your accomplishments in the lower one, then why do you take a fight that's so high up the rankings instead of working your way up like a Poirier or an RDA?
Because of where you are, probably what they're offering him, like it's probably, you know, they offer him a fight and him as a competitor, he takes it.
More of a promotion thing, like we can't have Weidman fighting someone who's not like marquee.
It could be that, I'm sure. But then the thing is, so Weidman says, "No, I don't want to fight Dominic Reyes," and then Forsake gets out. And then all of a sudden, it's all over the internet. Chris Weidman refuses to fight Dominic Reyes, and then it starts to make Weidman looks like he's picking fights. That kind of thing. I don't know. I just think, you know what, it's one of those things. Dominic Reyes, he's meant to be at light heavyweight. He looks really good at that weight class. And you know, it definitely could be. Weidman didn't have the time, but at the end of the day, the end of the result was Chris Weidman did get knocked out by a more skilled and a bigger Dominic Reyes.
So do Weidman and Rockhold's experiences moving up, does that make you less confident against Jacare when he goes against Blachowicz?
Not at all. No. I just think, like I said, you know, if they've both, you know, they've been around a long time. Jacare has too, but they've also, you know, they've been cracked a few times. You know, their last few fights have ended in knockouts for them. So it's not like, you know, they're coming off wins or anything. They're coming off losses, and they're coming off knockout losses. So I'm sure moving up and fighting guys that are bigger and hit harder isn't the right call for you. But at the same time, it could work out. Yeah. So it's just one of those things. The risk is high, but the reward's high as well.
Well, especially when you think, I am really wondering how well this move up is going to work for him, because a lot of his game at middleweight is predicated on overpowering guys, being the bigger, stronger, more grindy grappler. And is he going to be able to pull that type of game off as much at light heavyweight? Because usually when people move up in weight class, they focus more on a striking-oriented game.
But Weidman has, you know, at the end of his championship reign, you know, we saw him fight Lyoto Machida for 5 rounds, and he stood with him, right? So there is also that where Weidman, you know, at the end of his like middleweight run, he was standing up with the guys, and that's when he was getting knocked out. So I don't know if he was sitting there and he was like, I'm going to go back to my wrestling. That's what my background's in, and that's what's going to help me get back to the winning ways. I just don't think that it worked for him. Like, you know, I think that's what it was. It was just in his, you know, head. You know, he was like, you know what, I can strike. I'm becoming a better striker. That didn't work out for him. And then it was kind of like, you know what, I'm a good wrestler.
Back to it.
I go back to my bread and butter. And it didn't work for him.
Let's do a hypothetical right now. Chris Weidman has already said he plans to fight again. He goes out and he gets brutally knocked out one more time. Are we getting into retirement talk
100%,
at that point?
100%.
Okay, all right.
It doesn't have to be brutally knocked out. If he gets knocked out one more time, hang up the gloves.
Just a horrible...
And this is one of my favorite fighters. Like, Chris Weidman is unreal. He's an inspiration to me. He got me into this. So, you know, I wouldn't just say that, you know, it's because, you know, I want to see this guy do well. And, you know, he's a family man. And
he's got business opportunities.
Exactly. You know, he doesn't need to fight to make the money anymore, but he's a fighter. So,
all right, move on. We did so much news already in that. So we're going to have a short news segment this week. Yair Rodriguez versus Jeremy Stephens. We talked so much about the controversy after last fight, how that has changed, molded our opinion of Yair Rodriguez, and I gotta say, his performance against Jeremy Stephens molded my opinion as well. That completely changed the outlook I had on Yair Rodriguez's skill set and his chances as a prospect in this division. What do you think of that performance?
Yeah, I thought it was a great performance by him, and I must say too, it did kind of make me realize, I was sitting there going, oh, what the hell, Yair, you're all pissed off the way you're acting. But I've said it many times this episode. He's a fighter.
Yeah.
He's pissed off. Yep. You don't think. So, you know what? He's earned my respect. He's earned my respect back, and his performance was awesome.
And he's also come out, I think, and not exactly issued an apology, but acknowledged that he was wrong about accusing Jeremy Stephens of quitting. And
heat of the moment. Yeah, heat of the moment.
I mean, heat of the moment, but he doubled down. Yeah. He was doubling down on that fight week. That was meditated, premeditated slander there.
He's young, right? So I couldn't imagine, but
and nice enough when we met him.
Yeah.
How about those body kicks?
Yeah. So those body kicks were awesome. I just, you know what? This was such a great fight. I just wish it was 5 rounds. That's all it left me thinking was we could have had 5 rounds of this.
I think round 2 is a 10-8 for Rodriguez. Could have finished him, especially if when he followed him to the ground, he would have hit those punches to the body instead of to the head the way Aldo did. I think he could have finished him. His fight IQ seemed so much better with when he chose to throw what kicks. He's really dialed down his unorthodox spinny stuff, but picks really intelligent times to introduce them. His basics have been brought up, and now he can keep you off of him with fundamentals and mix in that crazy stuff, and it's fantastic to watch. His footwork looked great. His boxing, his punching power looked to have been increased. His ability to make Stephens respect his distance was something I didn't expect.
Yeah,
and this performance made me think he has a much better chance against Zabit than I already did, because we've talked about before Zabit not really having the punching power to back up a lot of his techniques, relying more on footwork and his grappling. So this fight made me more excited to see that, and it made me more excited to see Yair Rodriguez, work his way up in the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also, it was nice to see Yair, just the way he handled the pressure Jeremy was bringing to him, because Jeremy's a dog. He was not out of that fight.
No. Did Yair seem to crumble at the end to you?
He did seem like he was breaking. So that's the one thing. It's I'm really pumped to see him get that win, but at the same time, it kind of shows how to beat him. If you put the pressure on him,
he can still get Frankie Edgared.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what it was. He can still get Frankie Edgared, and if that fight was 5 rounds. I think that was a Stephens win.
Stephens had it.
He had definitely taken the momentum of that.
For sure. And it was just good to see just the sportsmanship after the fight was done.
Oh, yeah.
It was just awesome to see, both guys. It's always cool to see, but just after how everything played out, it was awesome to see a true scrap. That was awesome. Jeremy gets dropped with the body kick, comes down and starts wrestling him. Some nice ground and pound he was landing as well. Mm-hmm. So it was a good fight. I'm jealous I wasn't at UFC Boston.
Honestly, it seemed like a good night. I'd say Rodriguez, what's next for him, has to be taking on the winner of Kattar versus Zabit in Moscow, which is now the main event. It's a 3-round main event because JDS pulled out with a stomach bacteria infection.
Yeah, and I'm going to break some news here quick.
We can go. We'll leak into news again.
Yeah, Greg Hardy's replacing Junior Dos Santos and fighting Alex Volkov for that card, so there's still going to be a main event, I'm sure. You just have to move some stuff around.
Yeah, Kattar versus Zabit is going to be the main event, but it's only going to be 3 rounds because it was short notice. And then Greg Hardy versus Volkov is going to be lower on the card. JDS pulled out with a bacterial gut infection. Ngannou has been campaigning for a fight together. Yeah, it was some sort of bacterial infection.
I think it was on his leg.
Oh, that could be it too. Ngannou's been campaigning for a fight forever, so you'd think Ngannou. Gilbert Burns is willing to step in, as always, as Gilbert Burns do. Come on, I love this shtick. And then Greg Hardy ends up stepping in, and Ngannou's on suicide watch. So I see Greg Hardy getting picked apart.
No, yeah, I see Greg Hardy losing, especially after his last fight.
You want to talk about that? You want to bleed over and talk about that?
Yeah. We'll just move on to the Greg Hardy-Ben Sossolis fight.
Yep.
I'm just gonna say one thing. Like Greg Hardy, he did look better. Like he's getting more experienced in there. He was a lot more composed in the cage.
Yeah, it wasn't laughable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there's just certain things he does, like the way he carries himself. It's one of those things you just face palm. Like when he's at the end of the round and he's being all light on his feet, showing off his footwork while running from the guy. It's frustrating, right? So. Just a few things I'm sure he'll figure out, and I would like to not see him do that. If you can be jumping up and down all light on your feet, punch the guy. Don't run away.
It's just embarrassing every time. Exactly. Like the fact that they put this so high up on the card, I will never understand. If you're gonna make a place for him in the UFC and you're gonna give him his shot, and if you can't fight in a fist fight in a cage for a living, what can you do? I understand all that. Why is he so high up the card? It doesn't make sense. The level of MMA is blatantly, you can go. It's just like an amateur bout sandwiched in between two pros, and it's insulting to the rest of the professional fighters on the card, I think.
And it's so frustrating too when this guy, there's controversy in each of his fights. So he comes out.
Yeah, each of them is goofy. Yeah. And I even said to you, we watched this one together at your house. It was getting end of round 2, and I looked over to you and I said, well, at least one of his fights finally happened without something goofy going on.
As that happens.
And as the commercial break was on, he's taking his puffer.
And you know what? Like, he was told by a commissioner, somebody. Apparently it wasn't a commissioner. Apparently somebody just said yes.
And he wasn't even... No, not even. If you watch the video, he's with Dean Thomas. This is another thing, is like, on a side note, like, what the hell, Dean Thomas? What is going on with that guy? And what is he, like, associating with this dude in the first place for? So what happens is he's in the corner. He goes, he says, like, I need my inhaler, and Dean Thomas goes, are you allowed to have that? And he's just like, yeah. And then he looks over at
somebody,
just some official, not necessarily anyone even associated with the commission, and he goes, can I use my inhaler? And then the commissioner asks a question, is it medical? And then Greg Hardy goes, yep, ASADA approved, grabs it and puffs it. So no one even said yes. He just went, is it medical? And he goes, yep, SADA approved.
Yeah. And it was super frustrating.
It was sketchy. He knew. Like, the way he did it, he was like a little kid. Yeah. Like, he knew.
No, it's super frustrating, too, because at that point of the fight, that's where your heart comes out. That's where your grit comes out. It shows, what type of fighter you are.
Yeah, and for this guy... so far, he's cheated twice.
For this guy to be able to fill his lungs back up with oxygen or air, whatever's in an inhaler...
It's a steroid that makes it easier for your lungs to expand.
So you're able to breathe again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So imagine being gassed, you just finished running on the treadmill like a sprint for 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, you get... pumped up with air so you can breathe again, and then you go into the third round and you're recovered. He wasn't going to recover for that third round.
He was looking bad, actually.
And Ben Sossolis would have probably taken his head off. And it's just one of those things where it's shoulda, woulda, coulda. Now we'll never know, because Greg Hardy decided to use an inhaler between rounds in a fist fight.
Well, and then now it's even gone back, and it's been ruled a no contest.
Yeah,
and
thankfully.
So now he's rewarded with a top 10 fight against Alexander Volkov, because apparently there's no other heavyweights that exist.
It makes no sense. Yeah,
even though you got my boy Jorgen De Castro waiting next to the phone line, ready to fly to Moscow.
Yeah, like that would be a better fight. As far as being a martial arts fan, and as far as for the fighters in the UFC, why are you giving it to this guy with all this controversy around his name, and then after his performances that aren't impressive, you're going to give him this big spotlight, this big fight that could potentially move him up the division? It's a joke is what it is. So, yeah, let's move on from the Greg Hardy talk, and yeah.
Can I say one thing, though, about Ben Sossolis?
Let's see it.
He is on his way, well on his way, to becoming a contender for the Throwin Bones certified beauty.
Okay, well.
Okay. He's at his that first tweet when people were calling him a can, telling him that Greg Hardy was going to kill him. And he told everyone, what is a can? You can can these nuts. And then he went on the other day, and one of the most frustrating things to me was that his cornerman the entire fight kept telling him, throw the straight 1-2 down the pipe, and he just kept going and winging overhands with no setup. He addressed that, saying today, feeling cute, might not listen to my corner and go throw an overhand for another 15 minutes. I'm just saying the self-awareness, the level of humor that he has, he's working his way into my heart.
That's fair. All I can say is instead of Instagramming about it, listen to your coaches and throw the proper punches.
Hopefully next time that's what happens. All right, now we're going back to actually breaking down fights again, even though we went into news there real quick. Oh my god, and then we're going to go back into news again. Macy Barber, round 1 TKO over Jillian Robertson. Was this an early stoppage?
No. Okay, watch the fight and then watch Jillian Robertson react to the stoppage.
Well, it's got a name. It's called the what the fuck test, right? So if a fight is stopped and the fighter who can't defend themselves anymore immediately pops back up, a la Michael Chiesa, a la Robbie Lawler, and they pop up and they go, "Hey, what the fuck?" Usually something, but not exactly.
But in this situation, when you're crumbled up against the cage, Macy's pouring volume on her, all it's going to come over the top is a harder shot. It was a great stoppage by the referee.
I thought it was a good stoppage, too.
It was a great stoppage.
Yeah.
So anybody that is, saying there's controversy around this, go watch Jillian Robertson. Go watch the fighter react to it.
Well, here's the controversy, just because this has been a topic lately with Aspen Ladd appealing her loss, which we're going to recover because we didn't have all the information the first time. I guess the question is not necessarily is it an early stoppage, but would the fight have been stopped that early if it was a male fight?
Who knows? I think it was a great stoppage.
I've seen male fights stopped like that.
Yeah.
Eddie Alvarez versus
that had
RDA.
nothing to do with it.
Yeah, no, it was a legit stoppage. Let's bring it back to the Aspen, or let's finish up Barber and Robertson really quick. I think Robertson needs much better takedowns, or at least setups for her takedowns, because right now she just relies on her grappling game, and that's all she has, and she hasn't really figured out a true way to implement it, other than throwing herself at her opponent as hard as she can. Barber has crazy athleticism, her ground and pound is unreal, and her takedown defense is catching up. I can definitely see her working her way up the division, but do you see her... Let's say, we're just doing this with John Jones, so do you see her beating Valentina Shevchenko anytime soon?
Absolutely not. No. Absolutely not. Valentina Shevchenko is just such a high-level fighter. I don't see Macy Barber being the one to get it done, be the biggest challenge for her. Unfortunately, who I think would be a good challenge is injured. So, but anyway, so Macy Barber, this performance, I loved it. I just think, that call out over Paige Van Zandt, that's a good call out. That's a good fight. But I think that's just a fight that really plays in her favor at this point. So it doesn't actually interest me to in that regard, because it's Paige has been out. She's had some problems with injuries, had some surgery. So, I wouldn't like her to see just jump back in. Macy Barber, obviously that's two, pretty girls, big names in the division. So, so the guys, the fans are going to like that one.
Marketable, they say.
Yeah.
Very marketable
for sure. So you know what, Macy Barber though, I love to watch her fight. I love her when she gets on the mic. She's kind of like that female McGregor style, whenever she talks, you listen and you're interested to hear what she has to say. So I think she does a good job. That was a smart call out on her part. I would like to see somebody who would maybe give her a bit more of a challenge though.
I agree. I think she's ready for more than that, especially if she has that goal of wanting to become the world's youngest UFC champion.
Exactly.
Back to the Aspen Ladd discussion. So, we had talked about this a little bit. We didn't exactly incorporate all the nuance that we should have. Aspen Ladd challenged the decision to stop the fight, essentially challenged the stoppage and her loss against Jermaine Durandamy at UFC Sacramento. And I'm really, really disappointed by the way she went about this, because to me, on her own, without trying to rely on this faux gender discrimination issue, I think she could have won the appeal. I think she had a chance to win this appeal, because I genuinely think it was an early stoppage, regardless of what gender you are. I think you prevented her from, advancing her career and making a living, and you also took away her undefeated record. And I think the fight, and it was from one punch that didn't knock her unconscious. She had so much to work with, especially coming from the fact that you had obviously some bias coming in from her weight cut, which I don't think should be an issue. How someone looks on the scale should have no bearing of when you stop the fight. If they're good to fight, they're good to fight. And that's a medical concern. They shouldn't be fighting in the first place if you're going to stop it earlier because of how they looked on the weight cutting.
All I can say is this whole thing with this, her saying that, hey, the fight was stopped too early, it's ruining a chance to make my money. It took my undefeated record.
The big thing she said is because I'm a female and the fight would never be stopped that quickly if it was a male fight.
Yeah,
and she almost won the appeal with that.
Yeah,
it was 3-2, which is one of the closest appeal decisions there's been.
Yeah, that's fine. And maybe if she did focus on something up other than the gender of the referee, it did have me wondering about this. Like last week, we were talking about it. It did have me wondering about having a male ref judging female fights. Could there be a little bit of a want to be the hero? So, you know what? At this point, I don't care. You know what, Aspen lad, next time don't get caught. Don't put yourself in that bad position in the first place. You got clipped, you did go down. You know what, the ref did jump in, but we have seen early stoppages before. We've seen early submission stoppages before.
Definitely.
So it's one of those things. Go back to the drawing board, learn from this, and just come back better.
For that fight, Aspen lad definitely passes the what the fuck test. She was up immediately.
No, I know. I've seen the replay. Yeah. But at the end
what do you
of the
think
day,
personally? What do you think? Was that an early stoppage? Because I definitely do.
Sure. Yes. Early stoppage. But at the same time, there's a lot of controversy around her weight cut. Yeah. So at the same time, how is she going to be able to handle another punch?
That's not a factor.
This is my thing. Like you know what? Stop focus on the shoulda, woulda, coulda. Go back to the gym and get better. You know what? You got dropped. You got put on your butt. So what? The ref thought you were in danger, so he saved you. That's what happened. So get back to the gym. Don't look back. Keep moving forward. That's how I look at it. I don't know if it's because I'm a Rocky Balboa fan, but that's what I'd like to see in this case.
I think I gotta disagree because there needs to be some sort of accountability. Like, mistakes happen, but that doesn't mean they need to wear that mistake. So
are they gonna overturn it? Are they gonna overturn it for every time there's an early stoppage? Every time an early stoppage happened in the UFC?
I think this is a different type of early stoppage because this is your 16 seconds into the fight. There's been no exchanges so far. A person gets dropped by one shot, catches themselves on the way down. Right? Only something that only a lucid, conscious person does. And then a follow-up shot's... Well, first of all, Herb Dean's stepping in before there can even be a follow-up shot. That's kind of the problem, is the follow-up shot misses because Herb Dean's already in the way. So my thing is if we validate this as a correct stoppage because of either stuff that happened outside of the cage with the weight cut, or just because, shit happens, then stop a fight every time someone gets dropped.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying
is... that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is look at Jillian Robertson this weekend. She wasn't even dropped. She had her back to the fence. The ref stopped it.
Yeah.
So why the hell, if somebody gets dropped and you go, didn't she go face down? No, she went back.
She fell forward and caught herself on her hands and knees.
And Herb jumped in. So,
if I would have tripped on the street.
Herb's job is to protect the fighters, and if Herb made a mistake, that really sucks. I just don't think focusing on all this and it took my undefeated record, I don't think it's going to do all that much for her. And especially the way she did approach it, obviously that's not going to work in her favor. Saying about the referee was a guy, Herb Deem has
lost some respect for that. Sure.
Herb Deem has reffed many female fights and a lot more high level female fights. I understand when you told me about this, like JDR, she is fighting Nunes for the belt next. Mm-hmm. So, she is taking a big opportunity from her.
And half her paycheck.
But at the same time, JDR put her fist across her face and dropped her in the first place. So I'm going back to say this one last time. Don't get put in that position. You got clipped.
You got caught.
You got dropped by a punch.
By a punch. You say don't put yourself in that position. It's not like she got systematically taken down and fell into a triangle.
You got dropped by a punch. It's the same thing. The punch still landed. Don't
put yourself in a position to ever be caught by a punch.
What I'm saying is don't get dropped. That's what I'm saying. That's all I can say. If you're going to bitch about it, don't put yourself in the first place. I don't feel bad for you. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying is why the hell is this fight happened in June or July? July.
September.
Was it? No, I think it was
July. Was it in June?
No, July, actually, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah, I believe it was in July. So now, months later, we're going down. Aspen Ladd hasn't fought.
So there's just... should there be any accountability for something like this?
I don't know, man. I've said my opinion on it like 5 times, so I'm not sure. But from my perspective, if you're going to make this big deal about it...
I know, like, that's your opinion, right? So
that is my opinion. Like, and I'm being harsh about it. Don't get me wrong.
But in that case, should there be any accountability for the ref then, is what I'm asking you.
Well, did the ref not have to go to this hearing?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, they had this hearing. They decided 3-2. It was close to being overturned, but they didn't
If this doesn't get overturned, nothing does. Because this was one punch landed in the whole fight. And she wasn't knocked out. That's it.
She was dropped, though, Adam.
But
I don't
you didn't
get what
give
you're
her a
saying, man.
The rules are you stop it if she's no longer intelligently defending herself.
Yeah.
If you haven't given her a chance to do that, then, if ever there should be a fight that, should be overturned, well, maybe I'll phrase it this way. To me, this fight was a good example of something that probably had enough behind it to get overturned. And if this didn't have enough to get overturned, then what does? And maybe we should rework the system and make it a little bit more fighter friendly to appeal these things.
Yeah, I guess, like, from a fighter's perspective, it does make a lot of sense because, if the ref does call it too early, even if you do get caught, you should have that time to at least try and recover, especially, like, Aspen Ladd, right? Undefeated fighter. It does take away from her stock.
Well, and over a training camp, how much time and effort do you put in a training camp?
Exactly.
How much money you put in a training camp? How many times do you get punched in the head during training camp? Like, is it really that egregious and that much? Are you saving Aspen Ladd from that much if you're going to not let her take an extra 2 to 3 shots to prove that she really can't intelligently defend herself anymore?
Yeah, like, I guess it's one of those things where we don't know because obviously he jumped in early. But, in a future when, like, it does happen, a fighter should have the chance, right? Because, like, if you do get dropped and you don't have the time to fully recover, obviously that's going to keep eating at you, right? You're going to sit there and be like, well, like, in my opinion, from the fighter situation, like, I was down but I wasn't out. Like, I was, was able to keep looking. I was aware of my surroundings. So yeah, like, you should be able to appeal when this happens. Because, even though, like I said, my whole opinion on it and just, like, she did get caught. But
and I agree with that. Like, don't put yourself in a bad position either. But, anything can happen in MMA, all the time. And so it's like to just say never be in any bad position ever or you lose is kind of like, well, what's the point of having the contest?
Yeah, I'm being really harsh on it, right? Like, I'm really being like, I'm being kind of a jerk about it for sure.
But as far as women's fights being stopped earlier than men's fights, all you need to do is go back and watch Valentina Shevchenko versus Priscilla Cachoeira or Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington to know that that's not true. Like, that's blatantly, even the beating that Ronda Rousey took from Holly Holm before she got put down. Poor choice of words, but yes. I think it's evident that I don't think you could prove that unless you did a case study on unanswered blows. But that's exactly the point, is unanswered blows. And there was no unanswered blows in that fight.
Yeah.
And in the Jillian Robertson one, there was. She wasn't intelligently defending herself. She just curled up against the cage. Yeah. And even if those shots weren't landing clean, she wasn't doing anything to get out of that dangerous position.
The problem was it was almost like Herb Dean treated it like Jermaine Durandamy scored a walk-off KO.
That's exactly it,
like,
yeah.
Like that's.
It was like he was trying to get in before she could jump on her.
And that's how, like, what you're trying to say, right?
Exactly.
That's what you're trying to get across to me.
He treated it like a walk-off KO even though she caught herself on the way down.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think that's fair to her, like, just because she didn't look good on the scale the day before.
Yeah, like, obviously it's eating away at her, and she'll never forget it, right? Yeah. She's now not undefeated, so
right. Well, you think even like Cormier UFC 210, he was having trouble on the scale. Towelgate, remember Towelgate?
Yeah.
He looked awful on the scale. Got caught with a head kick by Rumble in the first round, dropped him, right? Fight stopped, Rumble's champion, right? No, like you give these guys a chance to
keep fighting. Yeah.
You know, let them go out on their shield. They're trained to take a punch.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah, so I did make a big I was being pretty harsh.
You know earlier, what? Don't walk that back, Kyle. You stand by that, and I agree with most of your sentiment. I just think that, and that's the rules now. But I think it's not harmful to have a discussion about, do we need to improve it? Because with all this, everyone's concerned about fighter safety. Everyone's concerned about fighter pay until they need to appeal a loss, and then all of a sudden it's fucking suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I was doing a very poor job of looking at it, from Aspen Ladd's perspective, from the fighter's perspective, that's, it's going to eat away at her. And I was being very harsh about it. So in the future, definitely should be able to appeal fights based on what happened, right? Because this didn't go through, it was close, right? And
absolutely, yeah. It was closer than, and that's why it makes me so mad, is it was the 3-2 split was the 3 men on the committee versus the 2 women.
Yeah.
So if she hadn't have introduced that BS gender standard argument, it wouldn't have even gotten the traction that it's gotten.
Yeah.
She had to make up a a gender inequality argument for this to even get traction, when I think there's enough there that you should have looked at it on its own anyway.
Yeah, just kind of adding that in, it just kind of...
You need a new system.
Kicked it to
if you need to make this grand claim of sex, sport-wide sexism, for them to take a loss appeal seriously, there's something broken with the appeal system.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you for sure. Because, she was getting desperate, grasping for straws, just trying to do what she can, in the time of day we're living in. I mean, we hear a lot about this, so
it's a big issue.
Yeah, so she tried to use that. Unfortunately, it didn't work to her advantage. It backfired on her. But yeah, going forward, fighters should definitely be able to appeal a decision.
Yeah, I like Leslie Smith's take on it. She said, it's funny that you only want to stand up for women and be a feminist when it's gonna benefit you. I hope you stop tagging "don't be a pussy" on all your stuff and all that shit. So she's very outspoken against it. She even says, I do think, and I want a case study on women's fights being stopped earlier than men's fights, because Leslie Smith has had that thing with her ear against Jessica Ai. She had her fight against Chris Cyborg, which seemed like an early stoppage to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so she said, I think it is a problem. There needs to be a study, but Aspen Ladd's still full of shit.
Okay. Yeah, hey, fair enough. So other people, in her divisions and other women fighters are speaking out about it.
Absolutely.
So.
All right, we're going to move on to a bit of a retirement talk. Joe Lozon had an emphatic hometown W, and not only was it an amazing win against a legit prospect in his hometown,
yeah.
Is there a way that could go better?
No.
Okay, so apparently Dana White, Joe gets on the mic. I'm expecting a retirement. Were you expecting a retirement? I was.
I actually wasn't.
Really?
Yeah, I wasn't, yeah.
Because we've had a couple nasty losses from Joe Lozon before this fight, and it seemed like he was sort of... I think we talked last week about how he seemed to be sort of losing his step. To me, it's just too perfect, and I think Dana White shared that sentiment because he said, I talked with Joe Lozon before this fight, so win, lose, or draw, he was retiring. And so the fact that he didn't retire in the cage and kind of reneged on it pissed Dana off.
Yeah.
Joe Lozon was on Ariel Helwani's show, and he said, that's not exactly our agreement. Our agreement was, if this goes bad, you'll never hear from me again. And it went fucking great.
Yeah.
Which is the problem. What is up with the retirements where you get the win in front of your home crowd, it goes as good as it can, and so you just think, still got it, baby, let's keep this train rolling, instead of taking your, like GSP, instead of taking your cake, taking it home, and getting to eat it too, you're going to keep rolling until BJ Penn status? What are we going to do here for Joe Lozon? I want him to be happy. I want him to have a hero's exit.
It's one of those things where, obviously he's lost a couple times, but he's, after coming back and getting a win like that, it kind of gives you confidence back. Obviously, he's pumped with adrenaline and all that. that. So, you know, I'm sure retiring's not really going through his mind at the time. It does suck because you never do know, like, how it might turn out if he does decide to keep fighting. You know, yeah, he could lose, get knocked out, or he could win. And honestly,
do you know when?
Honestly, yeah, I couldn't see too much good coming from not retiring. I know Joe's a legend.
It was the perfect send-off.
Like, yeah, ride out into the sunset, right? And that's the issue, right? Is these guys.
Do you know when the last time Joe Lozon won 2 fights in a row was?
It's probably been 5 years. Be my guess.
Yeah, 2013, 2014. It was Mac Danzig and Michael Chiesa.
Oh, wow.
Since then, he's lost 1 and won 1. Ali Quinta, Takanori Gomi, Evan Dunham, Diego Sanchez win, Jim Miller loss, Marcin Held win, and then 3 straight losses against Stevie Ray, Clay Guida, and Chris Gritzmacher.
Yeah. So, you know, good for him for coming back, getting that win. It just, yeah, it's unfortunate not seeing him, you know, take that opportunity to go out and, you know.
What's like when you're watching Let's Make a Deal and you know which one of the cases has the $1 million in it, and the guy should know and he doesn't take it because he thinks he's going to get a billion out of one of them. You know,
yeah,
it's just.
What do you think?
It's just like, it's so much sadder because it should be happy. You know,
exactly right. It's just such a great moment, right? And then the risk for the reward, right?
Yeah, you're just shaking your hand at the TV, going, "God damn it, Joe Lau, let me be happy for you."
Yeah, because
why won't you?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, we see it so often. Guys have a performance that, you know, might tease retirement, and then it's like, I still got it. So,
or you're like a little nog, and you just keep losing, but you still think you got it.
Oh yeah,
there you go.
Exactly.
Talking about him coming out. Is it just because Ryan Spann fought recently? That's maybe why I thought of that.
On top of your head.
Darren Stewart looks fantastic. We're just going to go over this quick. Darren Stewart didn't really seem to be someone who was going somewhere in the division for a long time. He dropped a couple losses earlier on in his UFC career to Julian Marquez, Carl Robertson, Francimar Barroso. He also lost one recently to Edmund Shabazian, who looks like he's on the up and up. But with wins over Deron Wynn and Bevon Lewis, how's it looking for the dentist?
It's looking real good for him. And you know what? This weekend, he faced a really high-level grappler in Deron Wynn. But I just think, you know, the dentist he drilled him. You know, he put him in that dentist chair, and he said, hey, this is an MMA fight, not a wrestling match. So you can try and take me down. You can use up that energy. And I'll be here for round 2 and 3, and I'll be piecing you up.
Very impressive, and with his stand-up ability, I think that Darren Stewart is in hopeful territory. I think we can start being hopeful to see him at the top of the division in a way that he didn't really look like he was going to be a prospect before. So that's exciting for him, and I love it. I love it when guys just put it together like this. Yeah. It's one of the most exciting things to be a part of in the sport, is when someone all of a sudden who looked like they were going to drift through, I don't want to say mediocrity, but they were going to middle out. They couldn't exactly figure it out and put all the pieces together. All of a sudden it just clicks. After you've given up on them. That's the best. Exactly. After you've given up.
When you lose hope.
There's nothing better about this sport than being proven wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just such a great opportunity to like grow.
It's always so surprising. And what would you like to see for him next?
Welterweight's tough right now. Is there a patient in need of a root canal?
Yeah.
You know what? After his most recent performance, it's tough to think of someone who's because Heinisch is fighting Brad Tavares. I like that fight. I like the loser or the winner of that. Give him the winner.
That is good. Yeah. Do you know when that is? That fight, or not sure?
Or you know who you should. Oh, you know what's a better fight? Marvin Vettori.
That is.
Marvin Vettori.
Yeah.
I think those are.
That would be a good
two guys who seem to be putting it together, who didn't look like they were going to.
And it's a big step up for him too, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, no, I agree with you. And also, Adam, what did you think of that Octagon interview?
With Darren Stewart?
Yeah. London strong.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I'm from London.
I was a big fan.
That was classic, yeah.
I think that they can definitely use all of the talkers from the UK that they can get.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Leon Edwards is not going to fill that.
Yeah, that's fine, too. Like, the way he talked, it was good. It wasn't about anything else. It was just like, yeah, I look good.
Yeah, and he recognized it too. He recognized, this is a new step for me. I'm on a new level, and I have a new lease on this division. Yeah. Yeah. I got a new self-belief, and you can see that.
Use your time, right? Use your time.
Do we have time to body shame Sean Woodson?
Yeah, of course.
Weird looking body.
Yeah,
weird looking body.
Weird.
Too many arms, too many legs, not enough torso.
Have you ever seen
his head's the wrong size?
Toy Story?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen
that? He does
look
like he looks like one of Sid's.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
It looks like it looks like
Jack in a Box. Is it?
You're right. It looks like someone took like a G.I. Joe arms but stuck them on like a Ken doll's body. It just doesn't fit together.
Yeah, it's messed up. It reminds me of a spider. Like
spider monkey.
It's creepy. Yeah, I wouldn't fight that dude just based off looking at his body type. I'd be like, nope.
Well, I would look at his tattoos, and I would realize that this man fears nothing, and he has no regrets, no concerns for anything. So he's just a scary looking person. Yeah. When Mars attacks, scary looking person.
Yeah, as you said, he looks like an alien, and he truly did. So it's a good job there.
But impressive skill set, the way he moved, the way he set up his shots. Great. Kyle Bochniak, the classic Kyle Bochniak move of only remembering that you can actually slip shots and pressure your opponent with a minute left in the fight.
That was awesome. That was like the Greg Hardy doing the little Muhammad Ali, right on the feet. It's like, hey, look at this. I can slip all these punches. I'm not going to try and counter, though. I'm just going to keep slipping and sticking my tongue out.
What happened a couple weeks when Gilbert Burns, after going to the decision with Gunnar Nelson, starts doing the push-ups?
Yeah. There's certain times where doing push-ups are not okay.
Yeah.
And there's very few times doing push-ups aren't okay. And you know what? After you fight a lackluster decision, don't bust out any push-ups. If you're on the C train, feel free to bust out push-ups. I'm just saying, if you don't give the fans what they want, don't be showing off that you got enough gas left in the tank.
It's almost like the Notorious after fight interview, the lackluster decision. The last thing you want to do after fighting to a lackluster decision is tell people that you only gave 30%.
Smart move. You just got to think about you just got to think about what 70% would look like. Yeah. I was a big fan of that Octagon interview.
Damn, that asshole always brings it back to Usman somehow.
That's smart marketing right there, my man. But that is very annoying. You're right, Adam.
Could we give a shout out to Tanner Bozer from Bonnyville, Alberta, getting a nice win in his UFC debut with some grotesque leg kicks, blowing up Daniel Spitz's knee. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
All
it. Just a quick little shout out at the end.
Oh,
we'll be right back with. Will we be right back with news? I feel like we got almost all the news.
Yeah, we got the news out. We'll be back.
One more thing to talk about for news. Let's just include it at the end here. The California State Athletic Commission has a new rule that they will cancel any fight if the competitor is over 15% above the contracted weight come fight night. Unless, of course, it's John Jones, then Andy Foster is just going to shuffle him through the deck and not be concerned about any credentials or expert opinions or data.
I heard about that. It's going to be interesting. I don't think it'll be too much of a problem at this day and age, but, some guys will not be able to fight in California, which... Hey, that sucks, but I'm sure they can fight elsewhere.
There's one fighter who's already come out publicly and requested that they don't book her for fights in California because of this.
Who is it?
I already said her. Fuck. I didn't mean to. I was going to make you guess. I assumed that you were going to think it's Paulo Costa. It's not.
Holly Holm.
It's Lauren Murphy.
Oh, okay.
Looking jacked in her last fight, by the way. Yeah. All right, last thing of the week. We're going to introduce a new segment. It's not going to be a regular segment. It's going to happen. Let's just run over this quick. Claudia Gadelha versus Cynthia Calvillo is off. Claudia Gadelha had to pull out. And Woodley calls out Canelo for a boxing fight for some reason, because that's what he's doing nowadays. He's like, hey, my hands have arthritis. What should I do? Box. So here's a new segment that we're gonna do when we feel like it, when we're truly inspired. It's called the Throwin Bones Certified Beauties. Okay, you listen to the Fights Gone By podcast. Jack Slack's got his boys. You listen to the co-main event and the Man and the Myth. They got their capital G guys. We want a way to add people to the team that we support, that are our favorites, that you need to pay attention to as an MMA fan. We're going to induct our first person here. What's going to happen is when we have an idea, we're going to bring it up to the other person unsolicited on the podcast, and we're going to get their real-time opinion on whether or not this person deserves to be a Throwin Bones certified beauty. It's the best of the best, not necessarily skills, but people you should follow. So Kyle, I want to ask you the question, do we deserve Nico Price?
Yes. Does
he deserve to be in the Throwin Bones MMA certified beauty category?
Nico Price deserves. You know what? Nico Price is everything I'd want, okay, to be inducted in to the great Throwin Bones MMA certified beauty, because that guy brings it every time he steps in the cage. Every time he steps in the cage, out of the cage, he's an absolute animal. He's a lunatic, and I love it. And I love it. So I like your choice.
And he's must-watch TV every time.
It's a great pick.
Do you know, this is also going to be our quote of the week, do you know what convinced me that he should be our inaugural member? He should be not only a Throwin Bones certified beauty, but the first Throwin Bones certified beauty, an example of what being a Throwin Bones certified beauty means for the rest of time.
What did he do?
You would think it had something to do with his upkick KO of James Vick, would you not? Or his fantastic post-fight interview, which we went over last week, which was also the quote of the week.
Yeah. No,
it's not.
Those were the two
things
something
new
through my head.
It's something new.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Nico Price says he is trying to implement soccer kicks into his game, legal under the unified rules, by lifting his opponent's feet off the ground to make them do a handstand and then kicking them in the face. He has said he has even asked multiple referees who have approved of the move.
You deserve, you are the Throwin Bones MMA certified beauty, and congratulations, because you know what? Even thinking about that just shows how awesome Nico Price is.
My guy.
The creativity in this man. He could have been an artist. He chose fighting, and we thank him for that.
Yeah. Just Nico Price is an absolute G. It's what all of this is about. And would this have been better if he just pulled it off one day without telling us about it first?
Yeah, I'm just so interested.
Because now I'm gonna be feverishly anticipating this move every time he fights.
Yeah, it's just painting a picture in my head, to be honest, and I just keep thinking of how you would pull that off. So, yeah, it would be more surprising. Yeah, yes, please. Wheelbarrow me and kick me in the face, please.
I have a pretty nasty rolling thunder.
Okay. All right.
It's all in the somersault. Okay. Moving on. That's it for the news this week. We're not going to talk about the battery charges because those guys are scumbags. We don't care.
Yeah.
You know who we're talking about. If you're in the know, you know. If not, you don't need to know. That's it. Coming back, we're going to quickly go over this week's card. There's not too much to talk about, so it's going to be pretty fluffy. Never mind, we're in a hurry. Let's go. All right, Maia versus Askren. Let's talk about it. UFC Singapore, Kyle. Who you got in that fight and why?
I honestly have no idea why I'm going to pick Ben Askren, because I just feel like him facing off against Damian Maia, he has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC. I know Ben Askren is a phenomenal wrestler, but I just feel like he might fall into a trap. I don't think, I guess he's definitely trained with high-level black belts, BJJ guys, but it'll be interesting to see him against the tough Damian Maia. I am going to pick Ben Askren for this one. It's a really close fight. It's a tough fight to see.
I think Ben is going to take over on the ground. I think Ben's ground game is going to be too much for Maia. I think he's just going to stifle him. Because if you think about Maia against Masvidal, Maia against Anthony Rocco Martin, even in his last outing. Anthony Rocco Martin is a great wrestler, nowhere near the pedigree of Ben Askren. And I don't think it's that Maia's jiu-jitsu isn't good enough. I think his age is playing a factor. I think he just doesn't have the gas tank to keep that pressure up in that grappling game. And I also think his system of how he works and how he transitions has not exactly been figured out, but it's a known commodity. You know, Damian Maia's game is very much one that was predicated on you know what he's going to try to do, but you can't stop it.
Yeah.
But I think Ben Askren is going to be able to stop it. My thing is that I don't think Ben Askren's striking is nearly as good as Maia's. If anything, if Maia's going to win this fight, I think he catches a knockout.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was just thinking, I was like, and especially for Ben Askren, you know, to get into the takedown, right? He doesn't have he really doesn't have the striking to set it up. Like you just said, you know, Maia's faced Woodley, like Usman, all those guys, right? Who, you know, they have really good wrestling, but they also can strike. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you know what? That's a bold call. Like, I
think we're going to see bold, K1 Maia.
But, yeah, who knows? Honestly, that could be a strategy, right? For sure. Because it's like one of those things. Ben Askren really is. It's not no secret. He doesn't really have stand-up. Mm-hmm. He has wrestling. Yeah. So, and that's what is so interesting about this fight is it's really like, I'm almost like not looking at it like either guy can strike. I just think this is going to be such a like exchange on the ground.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's a very exciting prospect. You're going to get to see some of the two most high-level grapplers from two of the most prestigious grappling backgrounds go at it and test that out against each other. And I think that not only is that going to result in probably some of the most organic grappling exchanges we've seen in a long time, I also think that this would have been a great fight for Ben to come into the UFC too. I think this would have been a great debut fight for him.
Yeah, no, it would be a good matchup for him, right? But like,
so it's a great fight to be hitting the reset button on.
Exactly. So yeah, you know, that's exactly what this is it's kind of like a second chance to, you know, to climb up the welterweight division for Ben Askren. So he was 19-0 before he lost his O.
He absolutely was.
So he's obviously, he knows how to win and he's good at winning. So
you're going for Ben Askren?
I believe Askren will return to his winning ways.
And I said also probably Askren unless he gets knocked out.
Yeah.
Which I could see.
To be honest, I literally think it'll take the whole MGM Grand Buffet to knock out Ben Askren, the way that guy's built.
What if his chin's cracked? Yeah. He's taken some nasty damage in his last two.
Yeah. So we'll find out. We will find out for sure. But
what about Stevie Ray versus Michael Johnson?
I'm going with Michael Johnson in that. I think his experience in there is going to pay off. And yeah, I'd actually say Michael Johnson by a knockout.
I'm going to have to agree. I think that, I don't see a path to victory for Stevie Ray here, the same way I didn't see one for Michelle Watterson. I think that the physical disparity is too much. I think Michael Johnson's going to be too fast. He hits hard. He's very precise. And his wrestling is going to be... His defensive wrestling is too good for Stevie Ray to take advantage of the grappling to wear him out. I think that every time he tries to engage and tie up, Johnson's going to separate, and I think he's just going to light him up with counter strikes.
I agree. And just the competition that Michael Johnson has faced, I just think that's really going to play a role in him getting the win this Saturday.
All right, we've got another person who, I mean, we can only do one per episode, or else I would put him up as well on this episode. Frank Camacho, friend of the show, Frank Camacho, who may or may not be coming on for an interview, is fighting Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush, not exactly the same name value he used to have.
No, but in his last performance, you know, he's came back and he's came out looking better than ever, so...
He looked good against Drew Dober. He won against Drew Dober with an armbar, even though he was not winning that fight up until that point. It is worth noting that Drew Dober has a win over Frank Camacho, but it was a war. It was a war, and it was split decision. So
yeah. Well, the one thing like you gotta also think about too is it's right. How much is it, of alone winning the small battle, eating the shots, being able to hang in there, and then, submit the guy? Because he wasn't winning the fight up to that point, but at the end result is he got the win, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just he had 2 wins, Thiago Moises and Drew Dober, in 2019 and 2018, but he's had a really unfortunate string of canceled fights. He lost to Edson Barboza. That's really the last thing I remember seeing him in, was losing to Edson Barboza. That was all the way back in 2017 by flying knee knockout. Since then, he's had a draw with Evan Dunham. He's had a fight with Bobby Green canceled. He got knocked out in the first round when Alexander Hernandez debuted. He had a fight with Chris Gritzmacher. That again was canceled. He had a win against Thiago Moises and Drew Dober. A fight with Drakkar Klose. That was canceled. So it's really... we haven't seen him in the octagon a whole lot. I think it seems like he's stagnated or not going anywhere because he can't get a fight booked.
Yeah, he's just having a hard time getting the octagon time.
Even this Thiago Moises, that was a late notice replacement for another fight, I know for sure.
Yeah, huh. Well, yeah, it's interesting. That sucks for Beneil. It really does. But this fight, honestly, I see Frank getting in there and cranking it up. I see him winning this fight. I see him landing some big shots, hurting Dariush, and probably putting him away in the second round.
I agree. I mean, I hope so. I couldn't be more of a Frank Camacho fan. I think he's one of the best personalities in MMA. He's put on some of the best fights we've seen against Jeff Neal and Drew Dober.
Absolute animal.
Even against Jingliang Li, that was a great fight he had. The more Frank Camacho I can get, the better. His story is just so interesting. The research I've been doing for interviewing him, I can't wait to learn more about his life. He's been in some of the most entertaining fights, like a mini Robbie Lawler. He's done charity work like Diego Sanchez for the disabled. He's even in his second pro fight, fighting is so prevalent in his family. In his second pro fight, him and his uncle were fighting on the same card, and both of their opponents pulled out, so they just fought each other.
That's awesome.
Right?
That's awesome, yeah.
It's stuff like that.
It's hard not to like the guy.
Things like that are what puts you in the nomination ballot for Throwin Bones Certified Beauty.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about that next week.
I think, talking about TBCBs, this fight could also end up being one of the Throwin Bones Certified Banger of the Night.
Yeah. No, I would stamp it for sure, Certified Banger of the Night.
Stamp this and the next one. We got Cyril Gane versus Dontel Mays.
Ooh, Cyril Gane's coming out of TKO MMA, right? He came out of there a few years.
He came out of TKO. He debuted against... That's a great question. Let me talk more about Cyril Gane for a second while I find out who he debuted against.
Cyril Gane, from what I've seen from him, he's a big, powerful fighter.
Trains with Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, okay, so he's...
heavyweight. Yeah. And darts in and out, uses a very interesting karate boxing style.
He's very light on his feet for a guy that weight.
But came up kickboxing and Muay Thai, so he has that to rely on if he gets tired and he can't do the karate blitzing anymore.
That's awesome.
Rafael Pessoa was his first fight in the UFC. So that's why we didn't remember, because we don't know that guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know what? We definitely watched that fight here. Actually, now I can remember it.
I remember watching it. I couldn't remember the other guy's name.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I'm pumped to see him. TKO MMA, great Canadian promotion. So always love seeing the talent they got coming out of there.
Absolutely. And he's against Dontel Mays, which he's coming off a great Contender Series performance to get into the UFC. So this should be a freaking great fight. Awesome. We got Randa Marcos trying to bounce back against Ashley Yoder. I don't know how well that's going to work. I don't know how invested I am in the Randa Marcos train anymore after that lackluster performance against Carla Esparza, calling for the rematch right after. It wasn't a good look.
Yeah.
Not super interested, honestly.
That's fair. That is fair. Honestly, I think Randa Marcos will get back into the win column this weekend.
I think she lost her last one, so she has to, because she wins one, lose one, which one?
Yeah, exactly. So I just think she'll come out hungry and expect a submission this Saturday.
Right on. And then finally we got the crochet boss, Maurice Green versus Sergey Pavlovich. That should be a great fight. Maurice Green looked fantastic in his last outing against Baby Albini.
I would take Pavlovich in that one. Yeah? Honestly.
What are you thinking of Pavlovich? I haven't seen too much on him.
Me neither, honestly. All I'm saying is the Crochet Boss. That's an awesome nickname. But what can I say? I'm just Team Russia right now. Pavlich, it has to be. He's probably not Russian. He's Sweden, isn't he? But anyway, I just think that he's tall. He's got the size. They're both tall guys, and he's gonna come and probably rip his head off. He's not looking for the Crochet Boss. He's looking for the Fight King.
Fair enough. All right, we'll leave it at that. That'll be a great fight. Also on this card, we got the Kung Fu King, Muslim Salikov. We got Enrique Barzola. We got Alexander Albu.
Whoa. Alexander Albu, let's go.
This is a
great
very,
fighter.
This is a very decent card for a 6 a.m. Singapore event.
Yeah, no, it is.
It'll be great.
And there's different levels to it. Really should be a good night/day of fights.
Absolutely. And that's all we got for this week. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you check out our upcoming interview. It should be out already, actually, with Johnny Munoz by the time this podcast is out. And then our upcoming interview with Jorgen De Castro, coming off his performance of the night against Justin Taffa at UFC 243.
Yeah, keep your eye on the lookout, and always go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Throwin Bones MMA. And if you haven't, go over to Instagram, give us a follow there.
And go over to Facebook and let Facebook know that them blocking our website as spam is fucking bullshit and that they should fix that.
Yeah, it's a joke.
So, all of that. Go do all that for us if you can, and we'll just keep on pumping out this free content for you. If you don't care for the podcast, we get really fantastic exclusive interviews every week. I'm not going to promise that. We'll do what we can.
All right, well, you know what? We're going to wrap up this show. It was a great show. And as always, go get some! Yeah!